Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Gung Hei Fat Choi. Happy New Year, everybody. Celebrate the Year of the Tiger with us on a Hodgepodge Lunar New Year episode. Oscar and I discuss the Lunar New Year and our Wah Lum traditions. We also discuss how we are evolving as humans, COVID-19, drunk driving, philosophy, and resolutions. Like I said, hodgepodge. Despite being all over the place, we have a really important conversation that will resonate with me for a while. I always love chatting with my favorite co-host and husband, Oscar Agamonte, and hope you do too. So listen and enjoy. As always, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Oscar.
Hello, Mimi.
Kung hei fa choi.
I will just say Happy New Year because my Chinese is not so good. But I could also say Chak Mang Nam Moi.
Oh, and then I would say Xin Nian Kuai Le. So that
Feliz
is covering...
Año Nuevo.
Yeah, I think we could have ended it there in the multilingual because this is widely celebrated by Asian countries. I should be a good podcaster and pull up a list of all the countries that celebrate, but this podcast is releasing on the Lunar New Year, which, as we know, is following the lunar calendar, which is why every year it changes.
Right. There's... Very good. There's a Lunar New Year. You know what's so funny about it is every year, even though we know it's a big deal for us, I always ask, "Hey, when's Chinese New Year? When's Chinese New Year?" So I guess I should just look at my calendar.
Well, we do have a shared calendar, right? And so essentially, I think now, even on the, US calendars, they have holidays and they do list it. So that makes it nice and easy for us. But I usually do my due diligence from the year before. And I look it up and then I mark it down and then I see what animal it's going to be so we can prepare. I can redo the flyers and get everything ready. So we've talked about on previous podcasts before, our New Year celebrations aren't actually typical of what a lot of people who celebrate Lunar New Year do, because it's kind of a holiday for them and it's a time of relaxation and family and food and enjoyment. And for us, it's kind of insane. And I mentioned earlier that this was going to be a hodgepodge of all of the Lunar New Year conversations we previously had. And then you shared.
What did I share what hodgepodge meant? Is that what?
Yeah.
Right. You said, "Hey, we're going to do a hodgepodge." And I was like, what does hodgepodge even mean? It means a confused mixture.
Yeah.
So I think the mixture part, you'll be in charge of mixing it. And the confused part will be me. So that'll
You got it covered.
We got it. Both sides covered there. Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, like I was saying, one of the episodes we did, we talked about like Wah Lum style Lunar New Year. And so this is releasing on the day where we're waking up early and we are rushing to get to the temple. We'll never beat my dad ever.
No. But,
on Lunar New Year, especially, right?
He also goes to sleep really early. So
so we rush to get there, and the opening ceremonies is kind of how we kick off the day. And I guess for me, I usually go in, make sure all my spreadsheets are ready. We've already done the preparations in terms of like having all the red envelopes ready for students and the baisan, which is the incense. We kind of have the altar prepared. But the firecrackers cannot be put up until the day of.
Yeah, why is that?
Because we don't want it to be outside overnight.
Got it.
In case it rains.
Perfect. Perfect. That actually makes perfect sense. You never know. There are firecracker thieves out there. Always hearing firecrackers around the neighborhood. So people put like, oh, someone may see that the night before, grab those firecrackers, or it could be windy or rainy. So, okay,
Right. I
that
was
makes
thinking
perfect
more
sense.
windy or rainy.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. Okay. Nature.
And so you normally are kind of helping out with that portion.
When we come in, yeah, I mean, mainly the thing that I do for Chinese New Year is do what I'm told. So the nice thing for me is I don't have to do as much planning. You do all of the planning, and then I'm part of the implementation team. So
right.
and that's where I excel at, doing what I'm told. But yeah, there's firecrackers that are hung on the day of because we don't want nature to destroy them the night
or
before.
Firecracker thieves.
Or firecracker thieves. Yeah, it's a real issue in Florida. Firecracker thieves. I don't know. Anyway, we get there early. We put a whole line of firecrackers that goes on for almost like 20 minutes straight when you do light them, and that is actually, we've had the fire department called on us before for the smoke and the sound. It's pretty exciting. I guess exciting for us, scary for all the neighbors.
Well, something that we've had to do in the last several years, especially since the shooting at Stoneman Douglas, is we actually call the school that is right behind us, and we let them know, hey, it's Lunar New Year. There's going to be a lot of sounds of firecrackers, which sounds like gunshots, because we don't want to have the school go into shutdown mode or do any kind of, procedure. Like I know they've done like drills and stuff. So these, as the years progress, it just gets crazier and crazier. What used to be like, oh, obviously those are firecrackers. Now, in Florida, there's a bit of a concern for safety. So we've had to have so many more protocols added to our list of make sure the fire department knows what's going on. Now we make sure the schools know what's going on. So, but knock on wood, it's been a relatively safe holiday for us. Like we don't have too many issues other than some scrapes and bruises from the Kung Fu performances, but it is, like you said, a wild and exciting and kind of crazy time. And I think I remember you recall that this is your favorite holiday.
It is, because it's so exciting. Because, for most holidays, I always say it's the same day. I mean, you just, like if it's your birthday, I always think, yeah, it's my birthday, but it's really the same day. Just give me a nicer meal, or, well, there's Christmas. I do like getting presents, so I'm not going to lie about that. But, as far as like the reason for the season, I'm not that type of person, right? That's just not me. But for Chinese New Year, it is just very exciting. And that's why it's my favorite holiday, because we're very busy. It's even though we know what to expect as far as like we've done it for many years, every year is a little bit different. And so I would say that's one of the main reasons why I think it's exciting.
What's interesting is that you obviously didn't celebrate Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year growing up, because you're not Chinese.
It's so weird. My parents, when they came to the US from the Dominican Republic, really didn't adapt Chinese New Year. And I'm going to actually talk to them about this.
Yeah, why is this? But what's interesting is where I was going with this was that many students, after being with us for a very long time, list Lunar New Year as their favorite holiday. So to me, it's interesting because you think about holidays as something that's so tradition based, right? And it's something that is often nostalgic from childhood or that sticks with you, and Lunar New Year is this interesting holiday that just like creeps into the hearts of many who experience it. Like you can feel the energy leading up, especially in the youth. Like you and I are coming on the non-youthful years. And so we are more, maybe a little bit more jaded and tired, but at the same time, it's still exciting because I do know, like when I see the kids and they're all psyched about the potential shows, or even seeing the 20 somethings and they are, working hard and getting prepped. And even though they're a little bit more like, okay, this is my, 15th Lunar New Year, it's not like this bright new shiny toy. there's still this energy about it that is hard to articulate unless you're there. Right. And so the morning of, you can feel this energy. And then there's always a moment in that opening ceremony. I love the incense. I love seeing my dad light the paper money and doing all the respect aspects in the beginning. And it gives me the sense of calm. And then the drums start and the show kicks off and it's insane. And I'm like, all right, get the lions out. Here we go. We kick off with 8 lions in the temple. And then when we're outside and all the lions are dancing, and if we're blessed with a good day, which most of the time we are, but I do have a moment, the firecrackers start lighting and it's almost like slow motion. And then the noises in the background, because it's muted anyway, because we all have earplugs in. Otherwise, I would be deaf right now for the Lunar New Year exposure. And there's a moment where I have this stillness and I think, God, this is just so freaking cool. This is mad cool. And it does like instill something in me. And it's maybe that's the like why to me, this is the real start of a new year. Like it doesn't really feel like a new year until I've had that celebration.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're kind of explaining being in the zone or being in flow. And I mean, if you haven't experienced it, if there's hundreds of firecrackers going on, loud drums, cymbals playing, lion dancing, smoke, kung fu going on, there's just so much things going on that doesn't equate even anything near anything that someone in the military experiences. But it's sort of like in the movies, when you see in slow motion all these explosions going off and the person's just in the center, just like, wow, kind of experiencing it. It's the only thing I guess I can equate it to. And because of that, it's so memorable. And because it's so memorable, that's why things are our favorite, right? Because of the memories. So
yeah, I feel like there's this sense of dread in the fall for me leading up to it, because it's this weight. Even now, 40 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to get this done? I can't believe here we go again. And but then once everything's set and organized and scheduled and the team has been rehearsing and we're ready, like kind of where we're at now in terms of where we're speaking. You and I are speaking like maybe a couple weeks right before kickoff. And this is where I'm like, okay, I feel good. I think it's more my preparedness kind of mentality, but this is where I'm a little bit more relaxed going into it, knowing that it's fine. But I still have a sense of dread, to be honest. I think just from a planning perspective leading into it. But yeah, so for me, I think that's all, the only downsides, but definitely seeing the joy that we bring to others is also really special, because essentially, yes, Christmas has presents and there's a sense of joy with that, but there's kind of a superficial materialistic joy, right? Like it seems a little bit more short-lived in a sense. Whereas, I don't know, sharing an experience with someone is very different than a tangible gift. And when we are doing the lion dance with a family where it is so meaningful that we are scaring away the evil spirits and ringing in the new year and bringing them good luck and joy and health and prosperity. And that's essentially what we're doing with the lion dance. And like, we're sharing an experience, and that's quite special. And I don't know if I've ever really sat to think of it and frame it that way, but I feel like that's the difference. And maybe the youngsters and the students and the people who have taken this holiday as their new favorite feel that way, because it's really less about yourself and it's kind of a community, and there's this different sense of shared experience. And I don't know if they realize that, or maybe it's not, maybe they just like performing or something, but I don't know. I have a feeling like that's a big piece of it. Why everyone seems to say this is their favorite holiday after experiencing it for several years with us.
That and the firecrackers and the smoke and the drumming and the lions and kung fu going on. So that's a good point. Obviously, giving a gift and seeing someone appreciate and be happy with that gift is always better than getting a gift, even though I never say that to anyone else, right? Because I want them to know that I want gifts. But the truth is, like, giving someone a gift is always better. And then the other thing is, the dread is also important, because then that means that there's stakes, right? Sort of like, what are the stakes for Christmas dinner? Like, I don't know, we'll burn the sweet potatoes or something like that, right? Or
well, I mean, that would be pretty catastrophic for you, because you really look forward to food. So
yes, but there's always white rice, so that's fine. You know, like, you just gotta realize it's got other options out there. But the dread of planning is because you want things to go well. But if there was no dread at all, then there's no stakes. There's no stakes, then it's really not going to be as exciting. So that's why it's always going to be exciting, because it's like if anytime if there was a competition or something, right? You got that little bit of nervousness, and because you're not exactly sure how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. It's live, right? Difference between
right.
doing a live stage performance and recording.
You know what actually is funny about Chinese New Year?
What?
I don't know why I thought about this, but the holy pants. You know, when you get a firecracker that explodes right by your pants, and then all of a sudden you got a hole in your pants.
Okay, I thought you were saying you had a pair of holy pants, like they were very pious, like they were very like special.
You would think that, because you're a very good person. No, I'm thinking about exploding holes in the pants from firecrackers, getting too close to firecrackers. That's why it's very memorable.
And then do you like do a ceremony like the Marie Kondo thing, where you're like, thank you, pants, for your service and for what you've meant to me? But we're done.
You continue wearing those pants and hope people see the holes, so that then you can have humble brag. That was a firecracker that exploded near me, and yeah, it was no big deal. I was doing kung fu or something.
Like we're kidding, but you asking your parents like, hey, why didn't we celebrate Lunar New Year growing up as Dominican Catholics or whatever, right?
Thanks for reminding me. I need to write a note on that. Reminder in my calendar.
But did you ever imagine like living this life? Like, it's so kind of surreal to basically inherit another culture, right?
You always ask me, like, did you ever imagine this life? And unfortunately, I have to say that one of the big things that I always thought about was, man, I hope that I marry someone who knows how to cook. And that did happen, but this is how limited I was. I was like, I hope they know how to cook rice and beans, because that's all that I ate 5 times a week, right? So whenever you ask me, like, did you ever imagine? I'm like, no. Because day to day, I was like, man, this is a good meal, because I liked eating. And I'm like, I hope I'm able to eat like this all the time. and now I eat way better. So whatever, man. That's sorry to disappoint.
Well, it's not disappointing.
My limited view.
It's not disappointing. It's just that my life has been so laid out for me, in a sense. Right? Like when I was 5 doing Chinese New Year shows, I didn't imagine I would never be doing Chinese New Year shows. Right? And so in some ways, I have certainly gone beyond what has been laid out for me and broken a bit of the mold and done other things. But there are certain elements in my life that I just can't really imagine not having or not having had. Right. And so I don't know if that's important or anything, but I just find
it's very important.
Interesting.
Because the point is that exposure is, I don't know if this is just me thinking out loud. Exposure is probably more important than knowledge, because I would say that I read a ton of books growing up that would have given me insight into all these different things, but I still didn't have the opportunity to the exposure then to say, or to even believe, hey, I can do this from the book. You know what I mean? So like, it's sort of, this is not a woe is me type of thing, but where I came from and where you probably see a lot of like poor immigrant families coming from, it's rare to be exposed to something where you say, hey, I could actually really do this. There's a lot of things that have to go your way. And so that question of like, hey, did you ever imagine this? I'm like, no, not really. I guess I didn't have those thoughts. And it's not anyone's fault. I'm not blaming like my parents or the government or white people. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it's just the way that it was. And so luckily for me, I met you and we got together and you exposed me to a whole different world out there. I guess I'm Princess Jasmine in this situation.
That
but I
tracks.
guess that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense.
So,
It makes sense. Well, well, for our listeners who maybe are new and haven't heard you and I just like laugh for an hour and not make any sense like we're kind of doing now, but yeah, we came from different worlds, right? And so Oscar very much grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, where there's several podcasts we've talked about it, but I can't name the number now, but I'm always fascinated by his stories and experiences that I could never have imagined, just seeing people shot outside while you were playing on the sidewalk, or you telling me, yeah, like that scene in Coming to America where they're all like warming their hands and this is stuff you see in movies. You're like, no, it was like across the street from my house, right? And so, or watching a documentary on the worst police corruption precinct in America in the 80s, and you telling me that was your precinct, and it was literally like if you look down the street, you could see it, right? And so I grew up in a very suburban Orlando, lifestyle. And so I'm always fascinated about those differences. And the fact that now though, like our lives have converged, right? So it's interesting to me always like that whole, are you a product of your environment, or, like how does that play into who you become? And so that's why I think I always ask you like, oh, did you ever imagine? And it's kind of, honestly, it's a little bit sad that young Oscar never dreamt or imagined, in a sense.
well, I wouldn't say that I never dreamt or imagined. I'm just saying that,
other than saying, can I have rice and beans in my future? If that was
my priorities are my priorities. I don't look at them as a bad thing. I don't know.
Like,
I got exactly
when I was 5,
I dreamt of. Like I visualized something, I dreamt it into fruition. Like I wanted to be fed well, and that's what's happening. So
you know what I mean, though. Like it's just like a societal thing too. Like it's fascinating to encourage this next generation to have those dreams and aspirations, right? Because as teachers now, that's kind of what our job is to allow children to become free thinkers, to kind of develop ideas and then believe they can implement them and not make it like it's a dream, but an aspiration or a goal, something to work towards. What we teach Kung Fu, and it's 90% of the time less about kicking and punching and more about the human you need to become, right? Or who can you become, and being a better human, 1% better every day. And so I just love the thought of like you and I, say in 1984, in totally different environments, and like fast forward to now and like where we're at. It's just fascinating how the world works, right? And so it's just, so as a teacher, what we think about our students and what we want for them, and how we try to teach them from our experiences, right? And then as humans, as you and I, as a married couple for however long now, over 15 years, and being together over double half our lives, right? So it's like, yeah, I never would have. I mean, you ask me, I wouldn't have imagined. I don't know who I would have married. I thought I was going to be a princess when I was 5, so that was for my
surprise.
But now I realize that would have been horrible, right? I mean, look at the, not monarchy, no, but yeah. So it's just always something to me that is interesting, like cultural identity, and then how you think just because you are of a certain culture. And I just had a podcast with Jason Chu, who, will be coming out in next week, actually. And we talk about, he's a hip hop artist. And where does the line toe with cultural appropriation? And I just feel like, well, we are in America, right? Where it's the melting pot, and then we all learn and respect and can celebrate various cultures respectfully, of course, right? And one another. So it's just interesting to me because you literally know so much more about the Chinese culture than many of my family who look Chinese. Of course, they're Jamaican, but who look Chinese, but have no clue, right? And so I don't know. I find it interesting how it doesn't have to be your upbringing for you to embrace it.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's really all about, again, to use that word, like what you're exposed to, and then what you accept, and then what you pursue. So this is, we grew up very differently, and we're pretty much the same now. As far as
one of our kids, our little one always says, "Oh, I can never tell who likes this song because you guys are like the same person." I'm like, what?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like we like a lot of the same things, right? So, but I don't know. I think when I look back, it has so much more to do with luck than other things. And I always get kind of pissed with these stories of, I pulled myself up from my bootstraps and I did all this by myself, because I just think that's such bullshit, right? Like we've all benefited. Luckily, my parents met in the United States and not in the Dominican Republic, because I was born in the US. And even though I could say, oh, where I was born was poorer than other places, it was still in the world in the top percentile, right? And then having the opportunity then, and we moved to Orlando for whatever the reasons are, and then meeting you, like a lot of that stuff is chance and luck. And I guess what I've learned over the years is not to be too judgy with other people who haven't achieved certain things or have struggled more. Because sometimes, you like, if you get battered down all the time, like you're trying to do something and then you're not able to do it because your parents can't afford it, or you just got evicted from your house, or it doesn't matter how hard of a worker you are. Sometimes you just get beaten down, right? And we just have to kind of be more understanding that that sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. So we try to instill these values into our kids, quote unquote, the kids who come to Kung Fu, but 99.9% of all those kids are really lucky because their parents are able to afford a luxury, which is an extracurricular activity, which is Kung Fu. And then by being in that environment, because their parents are able to put them there, then hopefully what we're doing is we're then giving them certain values that will then make them better humans. But that doesn't mean that 99.9% of the people who don't come to our school are not doing the right thing. They just haven't had the opportunity to be put into that type of environment. So I don't know where this all came from. This is all going, but
well, I mean, it's a conversation you and I often have, right? Which is why we are so passionate about movements like Black Lives Matter, and so passionate about movements that point out the disparity of systemic racism and how that's laid into our country, and that the thought process of everybody can do it if they just worked hard. It's not true, because I had the opportunity to serve on the citizen safety task force in my county with the mayor. And there's neighborhoods here that kids can't get food because there's no grocery store that's accessible, because it's just, and it's like, yeah, you could have just been born there versus here. And, and then it's like, well, then that perpetuates the problem, right? They're food insecure. So there's no food. And then instead of going to school, they think they need to go hustle to make money. And that might get them into petty crime. Like, is it because they're bad children, or is it because they're bad people, or is it because they're in an environment that is hostile pretty much, that it's just, there's no opportunity available. Right. And so the fact is we're not all on even ground. And so those of us who are privileged enough to be in a position of opportunity and privilege, and then don't do stuff with it, like that's the shit that pisses you and I off, right? When it's kids that are kind of whining, and we're like, your life is good, like, and it's hard though, because everyone's problem is a real problem. But I think it's completely in alignment with how you and I are always having these conversations on society and like how we can fit into that and what we can do better. And it does fit into the fact that, we're celebrating Lunar New Year. It's 2022, which is freaking unbelievable to me. People ask, oh, what does the new year mean? And I'm like, oh, it just means I'm getting older. But really, it's insane. I mean, we've had 2 years of a pandemic now that has flipped the world upside down. And unfortunately, to me, I think has shown just how ugly people can be. And it's been a bit depressing. And I think it has changed people forever. Some people are fine and some people are not fine. Like this has been this year's, like last year we thought, okay, it's going to be over. And then now for the second year, for it to drag on in the way it has, I think might be even worse for people.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, there's not too much clear direction of here's a definitive stop. Like here's the line that once we're there, then things will get back to normal. And I don't know, there's a lot of thoughts about this going through my mind, because as business owners, logistically, we are always trying to do what we think is the safest for the students and for everyone else. And then also taking into account older parents and, sisters and nephews with a lot of issues, medical comorbidities and immunocompromised and all these other things. And so, yeah, it's sort of like you get to the point where you're like, I don't know, I've had enough. I've had enough of all of it. And we get very frustrated with just the state of how things are. But, in essence, we're very lucky that the one thing I think is very unfortunate over the past couple of years is that because we've been cut off from everybody, we then go more into our own little circles. And so then it's this just perpetual machine where we only listen to the news that we want to listen to, and our biases direct us to listen to what we want to listen to. And I don't know. I am not optimistic about the future as far as, everyone's just going to get along. I just don't see that happening. So what I am optimistic with is conversations like this, where some people may say, okay, this other person that I disagree with, their intentions are good. Like if we were to look at most people and think their intention and where they're coming from is most of the time a really good place, then you'll have empathy for that person, even if you don't agree with exactly what they're doing. It's like what that judge said when he sentenced those 3 people who murdered the gentleman down in Georgia. And he said, hey, these are the consequences basically for you thinking the worst in other people, it brings out the worst in you. And so if we could just do the opposite of that, which is think the best of most people, then it's going to bring the best of us. And it'll lead to more conversations. I'm confident that we are trying to move towards that direction. And by I'm talking about you and I, like being able to say, hey, all right, there's more information now. Maybe I was wrong with the way we dealt with the pandemic over the past 2 years. Maybe we'll get information say, hey, listen, maybe we made some mistakes here. but now we have new information and we're going to change it. And we realize so-and-so is coming at it from this place. I don't feel confident that that is the way it's going to be for most people, unfortunately. But
I don't know what you're talking about, Oscar. I'm never wrong, and I refuse to ever admit that.
Yes, that's the point, right? Is we also where did we see that quote that we really liked?
Okay,
Was it
the Beastie Boys? Yeah, I was just going to bring it up. You could
bring that context because
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
One amazing documentary, but the context, of course, was a little bit about the Me Too movement, and I'm not going to remember. Was it Mike D? I can't remember who said the quote.
I think it was Mike D. Yeah,
but he was talking about respect for women and how women should be treated, our mothers and our sisters and our nieces, and just a really cool, poetic thing. And some reporter kind of called him out and was like, "You're the fight for our right to party dudes, and you disrespected women. You're such a hypocrite." And his response, and I wish I had the exact quote, was like, "I would rather be a hypocrite than the same person for the rest of my life." And so It's just to think that we can't change our mind. Like, I think it's interesting that people want to cling to the worst of you. So if I, for example, had an opinion and now that opinion's changed, they're like, "Well, you used to think this." And I'm like, "Well, okay, but I don't. I've gotten you information, there's science and there's other things and new information, or I've evolved as a human, or I admit I was wrong." And so, but they want to cling to that. Like that becomes, kind of an argument. Like it seems like people prefer to kind of not everyone, right? But it just seems like human nature prefers to cling to that argumentative, like I want to argue with you, so I'm going to point that out instead of, "Well, how come? Wow, it's amazing you think this now," right? Like you don't usually hear that. The first thing you get thrown back at you is, "Well, you used to think this.
You said this before."
Right,
I'm like,
right.
Okay, well, I was wrong. I mean, this is us in our 40s saying this. I wish that I had this insight even 5 years ago. Conversations I had with like my parents or anyone, right? My siblings, even you, like just trying to be not have the ego come into the way in where my first thought is like, "Well, you said this before," as opposed to it really comes down to yourself. Like, "Well, this is what I'm thinking now, or this is what I was thinking back then. Maybe I was mistaken." I'm trying to think about, we talk a lot about our students, especially the younger kids, and what they're going through. And on one side, I always say, these kids are so damn lucky because they've all got iPhone 13s or whatever. I don't know what, but at the same time, man, these kids are going through such a crazy. I would never want to grow up like them right now. What they're going through. We were really lucky if you think back to the fact that we would finish school, go home, go outside and play. If you wanted to talk to someone, you'd have to call them. Like you remember calling your friends and they're like, "Oh, they're outside playing. All right, well, can you tell Mimi to call me back when she gets back in?" Okay, cool. As opposed to just every single second of every day being inundated with all this information and with the pandemic isolation. And all that I hope is that we continue to do things how we think is best for other people with the right intentions for ourselves and for other people. And then also to look at the way that other people are behaving themselves and realize that deep down, most people, except for the sociopaths, are really trying to do things for the best for them and for their family. And even if it's complete opposite of what we believe, that's usually what most people are thinking. So yeah, that would be a hope for the new year, I guess. I don't know.
You're a lot more hopeful than I am because I've gone on my rants and raves about the fact that like just taking into this pandemic and where we're at. And, now that Omicron is kind of at its height and we are seeing that if you're vaccinated, it's not so bad. And also because of this, how contagious it is and, people are still dying and everything, but you're hearing people who are not necessarily vaccinated and they're getting it and they're like, "Oh, we're fine. And this is what we meant this whole time was that everyone's going to get it like the flu and everyone will be fine. And my frustration is we'll talk to the almost million people's families of people who have been lost from this, right? It's just so tunnel visioned to, again, kind of cling to that. I'm not changing my mentality on this. And and then, I'm having a bit of a struggle with, not that I want everyone to die, but it's kind of like, gosh, it's just frustrating when there's no consequence, right? Like when people get away with things, because I'm a bit of a rule follower, right? And so I'll give you an example which relates to Lunar New Year. We have to pull permits. We have to do all of these things. We have to follow a lot of rules. We have to pay a lot of money to pull these permits and hire professionals. And we do it right for our clients, for our family establishments that have been with us for so long. We make sure that they have a safe and responsible New Year. And then, along the way, we'll see a bunch of other people who want to light off their own firecrackers and pretend they're with us when they're not. And it really pisses me off. And over the years, I just kind of let it go. And this year, I'm like, you know what? I'm not letting it go, because I feel like it's disrespectful. And like, I have issue with the line of, you know what, I shouldn't let this bother me, be very zen and meditative about it and be okay. And then also the line of, no, this is people taking advantage of you. And then that's not okay. Right. And so I'm planning to rectify the situation and not have that happen this year. And I've actually talked to authorities about it. And some people may think that that's just like wrong, right? Like, oh, why do you have to spoil it for everyone? And it's like, well, I'm also the one paying the price, literally, and workload wise, so that everyone can celebrate. And I want everyone to do it as a community, like the whole, we are all in this together. And then it's like, oh, we're only in this together when it's good for me for that 1 second, but then I'm not going to contribute to the other parts that might be a little inconvenient for me, or might be a little bit difficult, or might take me out of my comfort zone for a second, or maybe, and I feel like this relates to my philosophy on everything. And I have a hard time with, like, do I be more zen and understanding and fluid, or do I say, no, I need to stick to my convictions and make sure that I'm not taken advantage of?
Yeah, that's a very touchy one. My thought is almost always, it doesn't matter, like, in the long run. But you have to kind of do the things that make you feel right. So if you know yourself enough to know that this would really bother you, then you've got a couple of options. One is to pursue go down the avenue you're going, which is fine, right? As long as you feel right about it, or not, right?
I also feel that it's not just about me. I feel I'm also protecting the other people who are doing things the right way and are contributing to the community.
Yeah.
So I feel also that sense of responsibility of, like, well, it's not just me. I'm fighting for all those other people also.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, like, there's two things. One is on this whole Chinese New Year and pulling permits and paying for that. I agree with you on that. It's a little bit, it's like the Wah Lum Temple's been footing the bill for 40 years on that, and always trying to do things the right way. And then there's other businesses that don't do that, and there's no consequences for them. On the other side of, like, when you think of something like COVID, there can be extremes on either end, where some people have a view of, until COVID is zero, we need to be locked down, masks, everyone needs to be vaccinated, on one side. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's like, no, I'm going to be taking whatever that horse, ivermectin twice daily, and screw the vaccines. I think there's so many. There's always extremes, and just like anything else, there's nuance to things, and you got to look at the gray, and I think there's this majority of people who who believe in science, who believe in vaccinations, and at the same time want to know, hey, when is this thing, like, when can we not go necessarily back to normal, but when can we do things this way? Like, you know what I mean? It's a very touchy thing. And I'm almost always in the middle ground with it. I feel there's there's negative consequences that are being paid by people being isolated all the time. And then there's a lot of negative that happens with people who are overloading hospitals and whatnot. And I'm not too versed in the science to know, like, to say this is definitively how I feel. All that I know is that I don't want to be angry when I see something that would trigger me based on my biases. So, like, for example, I'm going to just tell the truth of anyone who's listening here. There are times where I have seen links where so-and-so anti-vaxxer, and they would say all the things that this person says, now has COVID. Oh, and now this person has passed away. And the worst part of me would be like, good. That's horrible, right? Like, to say that.
This is what I mean. This is what I feel. I want to take responsibility for those feelings, right? I want to take responsibility for those feelings of this is justice, right? Yeah, whereas like 2 years ago, I would have been like horrified over like that being that person. But then it's kind of like, at the same time, I always equate this to drunk driving. The drunk driver always kills the other person in the car next to them or the car crash across from them. We know people that have been killed by drunk drivers.
Yep.
The drunk drivers don't die. I mean, and I hope that they live with anguish. Like, it makes me say, you had a choice here and you made a choice to drive drunk, right? And I get it. Oh, you're drunk. You don't know what you're doing. But like, then you give your keys away before you go get drunk. Like, there is a sense of responsibility to yourself, to others, a sense of like, do others no harm, right? And so I feel like that is why, and I don't know the law, but I feel like they get involuntary manslaughter, right? When they kill someone like that. I think that's what happens. And it's like, oh yeah, maybe they didn't have the intent, but I don't know, did they? Because they clearly didn't take anyone else's safety into account at all. And I feel the same way when people run around potentially carrying an infectious, deadly disease and not knowing who they're in contact with, not knowing if down the next aisle at the supermarket is someone who has no childcare options and has a child that can't be protected, right? Or has, everybody's situation, right? And so I just feel like it's reckless is what it is. I feel like it's reckless. And I guess I'm okay holding on to a little bit of my anger, keeps me a little fiery, but I don't want to be a hateful person. Like you said, it's like, man, this is like the worst part of me going, good, they get what they deserve. But that's the problem, is they don't get what they deserve. Just like a drunk driver, usually they're the ones killing other people and then they're alive, right? And so to me, that's not justice, but not that I'm saying they should be dead, but they shouldn't be killing people.
Yeah. I guess my question or thought is, what is the percentage out of people that's happening to? Like, we have a number of, I don't know, 800,000 deaths, right? Mm-hmm. Percentage wise to 330 million people, or however many people in the US. What are we on either side, whatever belief you have, the way all of these big tech companies are feeding us information are based on what they know will trigger us, either anger or happiness. So the percentage of stuff that we're getting fed, what is that to the whole? And so if I see something that'll trigger me to say, good, that's what so-and-so deserved, or what a tragedy, this person passed away who got infected through no fault of their own. Like, I just don't, I'm trying to think of what's the percentage of that to the whole. We're being fed this information, and it's triggering. And this is a big reason why I deleted all social media from my phone. Like, I would much rather listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook, read a comic book. Obviously, as you know, listen to my fitness instructional videos. Someone like Brett Jones teaching me how to do the swing, right? The kettlebell swing. So like all that stuff to me is a lot more valuable use of my time rather than being inundated with information that I know is going to be triggering. But at the same time, we need to know information in order to be safe and know that we're doing the right thing. And I guess it all boils down to whatever I'm saying right now, even if in 5 minutes from now, like whenever we finish this podcast, if I say, hey, listen, whatever I just said earlier, I guess I was wrong there. Like, people have to be okay with that. And the one thing that I will say that I really, and I just heard this from this podcast by Peter Attia, towards the end, where they were talking about the government, and they say, okay, sometimes the government may overstep its bounds and sometimes not. But one thing that I really don't like is when people accuse the government of flip-flopping, because all that is really they're getting information and they're saying, oh shit, based on this information, here's what I think we should do. And okay, now based on this information, no, here's what I think we should do. And science is that way, right? Like,
right.
Science is, I'm not 100% sure. There's not a definitive yes or no, but based on the information that we have right now, here's what I think we should be doing. And so,
I mean, and I think that's there's a very clear thing between being a wishy-washy person and being someone who is an informed decision maker, or someone who's informed and then changes their mind. I mean, I'm not saying like you should change your morals every 5 seconds or something crazy, right? But like, to me, it's very obvious, right? And like you said, that whole flip-flopping thing, I mean, I think...
Or to use your example of the drunk driver who gets in an accident, the drunk driver is fine, but there's some victim who is either dead or crippled or whatever. I'm not saying that drunk driver shouldn't get a punishment for it. That person definitely should. But if at least there's remorse, then you know this is a decent person. Like saying, oh, you know what? Okay, maybe I wasn't thinking about how this would affect other people. You can respect that person a little bit more rather than, yeah, I mean, I was in that accident, but I'm still going to drink, and screw you. It's my right because I'm an American.
Right. And see, and this is where I'm glad we're talking about this, and I'm not sure listeners care, but whatever. I love you, listeners. I'm kidding. I think that the fact that you just said that also sparked in my mind. I also believe there are probably drunk drivers out there that are probably doing amazing social work because of what they did, and are maybe saving lives because of it, and informing others and doing outreach. And I'm sure those people exist as well. So I'm not saying that out of a horrible situation can't come future pay it forwards, right? But I think avoiding the horrible situation is probably the best place to start. Yeah. I mean, at what cost, right? At someone's life, there's a cost.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like, things are never going to always be avoidable for everyone, because the way that we are is informed by like so many other factors. So the way you think is based on your entire life of all your experiences. You can hope that other people try to think that way, but it's just not going to happen. I always tell you, like, no one thinks the way you do, like processes things the way you do, is logistic with the way that you do. And you can't expect other people to do that. And then even though morally you're feeling that you're doing things the right way, and I agree that I believe you are, you can't expect other people to have the same beliefs, or, you're going to always be upset, I guess, because
just give me a curmudgeon and just get grumpier and grumpier in my age.
I mean, but saying things out loud, like how we are now, maybe that's also a way to process it and then say, if just having this conversation and saying things out loud, you say, okay, now things can kind of percolate in my brain a little bit. Let me think about it some more. It's not, I don't have the definitive answer, but at least I'm trying to work it out. Right.
Yeah. No, 100%. I say it all the time. And for our listeners who are still listening and haven't shut this off as yet, I learn every time I jump on this podcast because of conversation. I think it's Dan John that always says, yeah, when you have a book and you discuss just the end of at the end of the book, it's not the same as having discussions throughout because different things come up, right? Like different thoughts, different ideas, like when you have conversation, kind of that's where the magic happens, right? It's like you always say, it's not just what happens at the end of the book, it's the journey, and it's not just the end of the story that matters. It's just like how we're getting there. And yeah, so, for our listeners, this is Oscar and I's basically our breakfast conversation on a Sunday. This is what we talk about, if you ever wondered.
But you know what, this is where now I'm going to give us a bunch of props here.
Oh, okay? Good. Oh, good. This is our favorite part. Cookies. Yes.
Let me see if I can make this. So I'm having this thought.
Wrap us up.
I'm not enough. This is, you decide if it's the wrap up, but what I'm going to try to do is see if I can bring together all these thoughts that are hodgepodging in my brain. Okay. Thanks to your good friend, Greg Rucka. I always think about, it comes down to the money sometimes, right? So you and I are having this conversation right now, and we're going back and forth trying to work things out in our brain. Someone could listen to this and go, take one certain clip and go, can you believe Oscar? He's the worst person ever. He's wishing people die or whatever, right? There's no financial interest there's nothing monetarily that I'm going to get from this. Or you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're definitely not getting paid for this episode, just so you know, and neither am I.
And neither are you as the podcast host for how many years? So whenever you get any kind of a clip of a video or an audio, or you read something, maybe we should ask, is there a financial incentive behind what this person is saying? There's none for us. We're just trying to hash this out. And now I'm going to just bash someone who I honestly have never seen their show ever. Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, those people are getting paid. And on the flip side, Rachel Maddow, who probably I would be more in line with, right?
Well, she likes Greg Rucka's writings, so I mean that automatically gives her a yes for me.
Exactly. So we could, at least let's admit our biases, right?
100%. I'm 100% biased.
Right. At least we're saying it out loud. But when you hear those people say something and then you immediately either agree with them or vilify them, just realize, those people are probably getting paid to say things to get more views, to get more money down the line. And not that we shouldn't listen to experts. We definitely should. But maybe you can ask, well, I wonder what this person's incentive is to say this. Is there something that they're saying just because they're trying to work it out? Okay, I can give them a little pass. They're trying to work out these thoughts in their head. Or are they saying it because it behooves them to get more views because somehow they'll financially get some money? And you and I are definitely we're not getting any money for having this conversation. We're just trying to have a conversation. So you could judge me for whatever you want. I honestly don't care. It's not going to affect me in any way. So that's it. That's how I wanted to wrap up my thoughts.
Give us money. And on that note, thank you to all my patrons who do support this podcast in their very, very generous way. And, I think we should end with a little gratitude, actually, because, it's something you and I talk about all the time. And we kind of, I would say, even get preachy about it because it is a practice that does help me. So I know I got a little bit heated during the conversation, which you always say, okay, you're talking really loud now. And I'm like, I'm just passionate. This is me. I'm not angry. This is just me. And you've met my parents. I have to speak louder or I'll never be heard because it's just a loud household. So, but I always do calm myself down. Like the top meditation probably in my app is the gratitude one, because it does help bring things into perspective for me. So just like every end of the year and every new year and every whatever, I think just being grateful that we were able to, stay safe these last couple of years, and that we have vaccines, and that because of that, we're probably going to be okay. And grateful for this conversation, right? And so I just, poor Oscar, I just say, hey, I want to podcast with you because I want to release this one on Lunar New Year, so we can at least kind of, give everyone a positive, happy podcast to listen to on Lunar New Year. Yay! It took a little bit of a turn, but that's not unheard of when you and I get together and talk. But like you said, the motivation here is honesty and exploration, and having that experience where we have this discussion, which I hope other people are having this discussion as well. Like you said, they don't have to agree with us, but if it sparks conversation, then that's a good thing. So grateful for you listeners, and grateful for you, Oscar, and Happy New Year, everyone. Gong hei fat choi. 新年快乐, and
Chuck Mang Na Moi. Or did you want me to say Feliz?
No. I like Chuk Mang Na Moi from you. That's for our Vietnamese friends.
Yeah, I apologize. My tones are probably completely off.
Mine too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I just like the way it sounds, like to say New Year in Vietnamese. But I know that it's just to a native ear, they're probably like, eek, that's horrible. So, hey,
but I think, we're trying.
The effort is there.
Yeah, it's an effort. But I hope everybody does have a very good Lunar New Year. And if you are around, check out our social media, because we are probably painting the town lion dance right now, as they say. So having a good time with firecrackers. It will be fun. Yes. So you're listening to this. It is the year of the tiger.
Rawr.
Happy New Year, everyone. Check in next week, and we'll have some more fun conversations on the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.